Hey everyone, Dimitri here, and today we are going to destroy this Klim F5 helmet. So this is not a review of any kind. I actually already have a review of this helmet, long-term review. I've been very happy with it. I've used it for about 300 hours, and after a recent crash, there's a crack in the EPS, hence why this helmet is now retired. And I figured I use this opportunity to do a little bit of destructive testing with it, and then cut it in half and just see how it's kind of built on the inside, mostly for my own curiosity. Round one, 5 drops onto concrete from about 6 feet above with about 12 pounds worth of sandbag inside. The shell is pretty much fine. There's some scratches, some dings on it, no big deal. So inside there's definitely quite a bit more damage. There's a crack right here, and the Koroyd is very visibly damaged. So if this was a real life situation, I would personally not be using this helmet again, because there's a good amount of visible damage to the impact absorption materials inside the helmet, and it's not going to do as well in subsequent crashes. So round two, we got this brick involved, and that is just to give it, to focus the impact a little bit more, and see if we can do some damage to the shell. As you can hopefully see here, the shell is still fine. There's a bunch of scratches in the paint, but there's no real cracks or anything like that. But the inside, the Koroyd at this point is completely trashed. The EPS actually doesn't look like it's any more damaged than last time, so it will be interesting to see what it looks like on the shell side, so between the shell and the EPS layer here. This was actually pretty interesting because it took fewer hits with a sledgehammer to smash this helmet than it did some cheaper polycarb helmets. The carbon fiber actually started cracking after only 1 or 2 hits. It popped back out, but you can see this entire top section just kind of fell in, which is pretty interesting. It might have less to do with the carbon fiber and more to do with the fact that there's a lot of venting around it, because I'm sure this part is probably a little bit stronger. So the shell here took probably 7 to 10 good hits with a sledgehammer, and it definitely shows it. I was honestly expecting it to be a little bit more difficult to break. It's still in one piece. It's actually took a pretty similar amount of effort to the polycarbonate shells of the 2 helmets that I broke in the other video. So I was honestly expecting carbon fiber to be a little bit more difficult to smash, but it kind of feels like carbon fiber is a little bit more brittle. So once it started cracking here in a couple spots, it lost all of its structural integrity. So the other thing that's really interesting is the EPS. Klim advertises this as having multiple densities of EPS inside, and I just wanted to see how they did that because everybody does it differently. And what's interesting is that the less dense EPS, so the softer EPS, is actually against the shell of the helmet. You can see I can compress it by hand. And the denser EPS is on the inside of the helmet, so against your head, which is a lot more difficult for me to compress by hand. You can feel this. You don't need a durometer even or anything to feel the difference in them. And then the other interesting observation about this EPS and the liner system in general is in how many pieces it is. So there's pieces all over here, there's a bunch more pieces there. So as soon as I started impacting this helmet, it started cracking because there's so many different vents and whatnot. It's actually pretty easy for it to crack because it's not just one big piece of EPS. So that's just something that's kind of curious as well. Granted, by the time any of this sort of like any kind of impact like that happens, you're probably replacing your helmet anyway. Another thing that I just noticed that's kind of cool, so these are the two layers of EPS. This is the softer layer, and these little ridges here actually act as an extra soft layer. So this is between the two layers right here. So when you have an impact, these little ridges would smush first, and then you get to the main body of the EPS. So it essentially acts almost like a third layer or third density of EPS, which is a really clever design from Klim. And it is actually pretty interesting to see how durable it is, because I'm standing at it right now and it's not compressing. And this is a smaller piece that I just stood on. It's nice and smushed. So it is pretty cool that you can clearly see that this is pretty used up. And another curious bit, that this visor is still fine. So whatever Klim makes these visors out of is some pretty awesomely durable material. So hopefully you guys found this video entertaining. I was honestly kind of bummed to smash up this helmet because it's been such a good helmet for me, but it was already retired. I wasn't going to use it because the EPS was cracked. So it was kind of interesting to just smash it up and see how it holds up to some really gnarly abuse. And obviously it didn't do super well with a sledgehammer, but that's not what a helmet is designed to do. And to be fair to it, from the very start, even the smallest drops, I think were actually much more intense, just based on seeing the damage on the helmet itself, much more intense than all the tip overs that I've had on a dirt bike, and smacking my head against branches and so on. So all of these things that I put this helmet through this afternoon are by far exceed the typical type of stuff that it will actually see in real life on the trails. So it has been a great helmet for me in protecting my noggin. And yeah, hopefully you guys enjoyed it and found this interesting. And if you have any comments or questions or thoughts or suggestions for what I should do with future retired helmets, definitely leave a comment below, and ride on.